My name is Jay Worley, and I'm in the Instructional Technology program here at KSU. And my capstone was over professional learning communities and Microsoft Teams and data analysis. So in our class ITEC 8500 in my capstone report, I outlined the statement of need as being trying to solve the problem where our PLC, our professional learning community, had about 5 people in it, and the problem was that the data protocol worksheet that we had to go off and everything was very basic and did not give us a chance to really kind of do a deep dive into item analysis and things like that in our summative assessments. We're required by our school principal to give a common assessment, so we have the ability to sit down and look at things that we're doing right and wrong, and making good data-driven discussion decisions and everything based on what the kids are doing on the test. And so the problem was that we were not getting our data prepared as quickly as what it should be. We'd set a date, say, hey, we're going to meet this Wednesday and everything, and there was always 1 or 2 people that didn't have the data ready because it was just kind of a manual process. We needed a process that was easier. We needed something that was more digitized, and just really for the data analysis protocol itself, we needed something that was much more expanded and gave us an opportunity to deep dive into things that we should or should not be doing in the classroom in terms of like different types of instruction, methods and things like that, and then give us a chance to rate our students in terms of how prepared they were, and weak and strengths of the test itself, and some of the questions that they struggled on in order to have a better chance at getting that test updated for the next round of tests for the next semester. So what my need or my decision was to create a digital workspace out of the Microsoft Teams website, and also using the Microsoft Forms, which is like Google Docs and which is like Google Forms, that lets you collaborate very effectively together and everything. And it worked out very well, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. Okay, so what I want to do next is walk you through my project plan for my capstone project here. Okay, so as you can see that I did use the ADDIE model, and if you remember, we learned about the ADDIE model back in 445, I believe it was. And ADDIE stands for Analysis, Design, Development, Implementation, and Evaluation. And so you can see here that back in the mid-fall 2018, the first phase is, of course, is doing some analysis, right? And so I had a project deliverable here to get this done by October 15th, 2018. I think that probably like most of us, I had started this in earnest and gotten this thing rolling by late September. So I think I gave myself a couple of weeks to get this done. And the big thing here, the deliverable wise, was to get the PLC buy-in, and I had about 5 people in my PLC at the time, get them to understand generally what the Microsoft Teams features were, and to make sure that they, again, we're going to buy into this whole thing. The next thing I had to do that you can see here is I had to get the central IT staff to create a Microsoft Teams site for us. Okay. Then next we moved along to the design phase, and I gave myself about a month to do that right there. And the big 2 deliverables here were to get the Microsoft Team website up and running and designed, and then I also had to do some Microsoft Forms layout. So I used the forms to record the data and everything that we used in our survey instruments. Okay. The next step was to do the project development, and this is where I spent quite a bit of time. And this I gave myself an extra 2 weeks here, so you can see it goes about 6 weeks. And so I had to spend quite a bit of time working on the website, making that the forms were properly laid out. And this is where I had to understand, what I was missing as I was doing the forms and everything. And I realized that, hey, we're not recording the right amount of data. There are new things that we could record and other things that we were missing and stuff like that. And so it was kind of like an iterative process. And so then at that point I had to test the forms and make sure that I could easily export the data out into Excel in order to generate some data-driven charts and infographics that we've learned how to do in some of the other classes we've had, in order to make the evaluation phase really meaningful. All right, so then we moved into the project implementation phase, which started the day that we got back from school on January 2nd. And at that point and everything, I had to make sure that I was ready to do my training with my PLC. That was our one day that we had to do the training, and everything went very well and smoothly. There was a couple of people that I had to follow up with to make sure that they understood what was going on. And the ease of use of the team's website is pretty obvious, but I had to get them logged in and see where they were using it, because this is not a tool that our county really uses that much and everything at the time. We've started to use a little bit more, but it worked out pretty well in terms of the overall training. And then finally was the evaluation phase. So my implementation phase ran all the way through early May. By early May, we were getting ready for the EOCT. We've given all of our tests, and there's nothing really left that we've got to go do in terms of these summative data analysis that we did. And that was the focus of the actual plan, as we talked about, in the introduction and the title and the statement of need. And then finally, over the summer, I had planned to try to get the evaluation stuff done by the end of July, so that when we came back to school in our pre-planning and everything, I could spend about 30 minutes or whatever with the project team, trying kind of evaluating everything once I had all the final data pulled together and had it ready for them to talk about and everything. And the good thing is they all felt like that we did a very good job with it. It was very meaningful, and so we determined that we would continue to use the digital workspace during our collaborative process this new school year. So I felt like that it went pretty well. So again, I used the ITEC model, the analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation in order to go about my project plan. The last thing to talk about is I'm going to scroll down here and go through my project timeline. So my project timeline shows the approximate number of hours that I spent doing different things. And as you can see here, there was quite a bit of time spent training, a good bit of time in the development phase. That was probably the biggest amount of time that I spent there. And then moving down, we had several, once we hit February, late January, we're really in the process of using it. So I allocated about 10 hours for each of the months, January, February, March, April, and then May as well, and everything, completing that. And then So next I want to talk about the project evaluation plan from my Capstone paper. As you can see here, I wanted to do two different methods of being able to try to evaluate the overall project. And the evaluation was primarily focused on getting the feedback from my 5 Geometry PLC members. I had hoped to be able to get it in front of my principal at some point and everything, and to present the results, but that was never really able to happen. He was a first-year principal last year, and over the summer he was just too busy, and I wasn't able to get in front of him. But I'll show you the survey that we had, and then I'll give you a little bit of insight into the interviews that I did and the outcomes. So I had 5 people in my PLC, and the goal was to try to get some data from our evaluation and assessment coordinator, and I'd asked her for the fall data and the spring data, and there was some sort of mix-up and stuff like that she couldn't get me the right data and stuff like that, and I'm not really sure what happened there, but ultimately I wasn't able to do an actual analysis on whether or not I really felt like that the implementation of the digital workspace really worked out the way that we had hoped, which was to raise test scores, to actually look at the data and try to do some analysis on it. So unfortunately that just didn't actually happen, and I wish that it had, because it would have really helped create a final project that worked out very well. But basically down here you see the survey instrument that I gave to my team members here. You can see that it had 3 goals: to evaluate the instructional outcomes that result from the use of the digital workspace and the updated data collection and analysis protocols. So that was stated as part of the statement need. We wanted to evaluate the impact of the digital workspace and updated data collection protocols had on any of the spring 2019 geometry scores. And of course, since I wasn't able to get that data, we were not able to make that evaluation. And then we wanted to evaluate the viability of the school-wide rollout of the digital workspace and updated data collection and analysis protocols. As I said in the statement need, one of the big things is that we have this sort of like haphazard, not very good data analysis paperwork Word document that we record stuff in. It's very generic and it doesn't go very into depth and everything. And I think that the feedback that I got when we answered all these questions, I had all 5 people answer the questions and stuff like that, and in my PLC, and they all came back and said that, hey, the big win here is that it just really made it a lot easier for us to be timely with getting our data pulled together so that we could meet in a timely manner about it, but also they felt like that the additional in-depth analysis that we did, that we will show you in another part of this capstone review, that it was all very meaningful and stuff. So overall, got very good results from this, but unfortunately I was just not able to put it in front of my my principal, over the summer or anytime early this fall to be able to get an approval and everything, or to make, let's say, not to get approval, but to make a recommendation that he take it to the, the central office and ask them about trying to roll it out, for the entire school. But overall, it was very good, and I was very happy with the way that everything worked out. So let me take you a moment and walk you through the Microsoft Teams digital workspace. Again, this is part of the Office 365 suite. So you had conversations threads here, and we didn't use this as much as I would have liked, but that's mainly because it was really hard to get everyone in the PLC to buy in. The main goal was to streamline the data analysis and collection process, which we did very successfully. Didn't have any files to put out here. You'd normally put files out there like Word document, Excel, but basically we digitized all that. You have this PLC notebook, so when you create a particular team site, the Microsoft software goes out there and pulls some information that's relevant to what your team site is about. And as you can see, that if you're fairly familiar with the PLC process, it's all about, plan, do, check, and act, right? Okay, so here's the main thing that I had to do as part of my capstone. I had to create 6 different ones of these. They were tailored to each unit and everything. You'll see a little bit more of that in a moment. So you had some instructions here for each one up at the top. You choose your name. Each teacher would do this. If you have an EOCT class, you're familiar with the percentage of students that are 0 to 67% that are beginning learners, then developing learners, proficient learners, and distinguished learners. And so that's the beginning of the data analysis there. Hey, how is your class doing relative to other teachers that are teaching the same class? And so if you're familiar with statistical measures like the median test score, the average test score, the standard deviation, these are all important measures of variation. Then we get into this section right here. Number 9 was tailored per unit. So this particular unit would be looking at rotations, reflections, translations, and symmetry. So the teacher had the opportunity to go in here and reflect on what the strengths and weaknesses of the students were. And you have some different instructional strategies that might change from unit to unit, and everything was very helpful. And then we had these results indicators of what was working and not working, for each unit. And then you have these net promoter scores. This is a type of, it's like a Likert scale, and it's very good at trying to get you to see what is promoter, it's good. If it's passive, it's kind of neutral, and if it's a detractor. So the 2 things I came up here with was how prepared were the learners for this assessment, and how challenging and rigorous was it. So I think one of the main final areas we're supposed to talk about here is just kind of reflecting on the capstone. And I feel like that my capstone was really a great opportunity for me to do some of the things that we learned about in our class. Things like being an instructional coach, being part of a data team and everything, because we definitely did that as part of my capstone. And so I was very excited about it. I was very pleased and happy that all the teachers that are in my PLC, the 5 teachers, we lost one last year, but we replaced a new one, and I was very happy that when we had that pre-planning meeting this year and everything, they were very pleased with how everything went and the way that the Microsoft Teams website, even though we didn't use this as expanded as we possibly could, and some other areas in North Paulding have gone on to use it pretty well, but we're all very happy with the way that it worked out, and especially the Microsoft Forms and the data analysis that we were able to derive from inputting our data very quickly into the form and being able to meet and having it all there and ready and everything and have it documented for our administrators. We all decided as a group of PLC to continue on using that, this year and everything. And so I think that, upon reflecting, I think that's the best indicator of it being a successful project, that it just wasn't a one-time thing, that it's going to carry on and everything and become part of the way that we're doing some of the things here in the math department here at North Paulding, specifically in the geometry department.